Okay, so for module 3, what we are doing here is we are talking about estimation, right? Estimation. So do you remember what are the two kinds of estimation? So two different types of estimation.
Point and interval.
Yes, point versus interval estimation, right? That's absolutely right. That's very good. Okay, and so point estimation is easy to find out because what I meant is, for example, let's take a look. So if you want to estimate a mean, population mean, that's a mu, you can use a sample mean to do it, right? You want to estimate something from the population, which is typically much bigger in size. You may want to use the sample, which is smaller in size, and this part is easy to find. If you want to estimate a population standard deviation, you can use the sample standard deviation. Similarly, for P and P bar, so P is going to be, let's see, so P is going to be the population proportion. If you want to estimate this quantity, because this quantity is unknown, you can estimate it using P bar, right? That's going to be the sample proportion. Okay, and so these quantities, which I just highlighted, I circled here, this represents our point estimation, This is easy to do, but there's a lot of limitations with point estimation because this is just one number. And a lot of times we probably want to have a range of numbers. We want to quantify how certain or how uncertain we are with the point estimation. Okay, so you would have to plus minus something else to your point estimation. Okay, so let's take a look at what that means. Okay, so for example, if you have a point estimate, I'm just gonna write down here point estimate. You want to plus minus something to give you another estimate. So what is that quantity that's called a plus minus? What is it called?
Margin of error.
Margin of error, right? Okay, sorry. Ah, great. Okay, I have a dual monitor and it's really confusing. Okay, so margin of error. Okay, great. And so what is the plus and minus called in total? What is this called? The sum or the difference? What is it called?
Would that be the confidence interval?
Yes, confidence interval, right? So I'm going to write down here confidence interval, right? Okay, so you can see the relationship between point estimation versus confidence interval. So point estimation is the first part, and confidence interval is the point estimate plus minus the margin of error, right? It gives you confidence interval, right? Okay, great. So what we want to do here for this lecture, for this meeting, is we want to talk about how we can find a confidence interval. You guys have already seen the in the formulas already. Okay, so let's take a look. So I'm gonna separate all the problems into two different kinds of problems. Okay, so mean problems, that's going to be deal with numerical data, and also proportion problems, that's going to deal with categorical data. So for mean problem, there are two different types of problem you're going to see. So one of them is if the population standard deviation is known. For example, the question tells you we know the spread of the population, and that's going to be sigma. If that number is given to you, if it's known, you're going to use the formula given afterwards. So X bar, this is nothing but a point estimate, right? You guys see it? So this is the point estimate, right? Okay, and the plus minus part, this part is going to be margin of error, right? Okay, and so I'm going to ask you, what is the Z called from the lecture slides? What is it called? It's a Z something else, right? What is that something else? It starts with the letter M. Multiplier, okay, right? Z multiplier, okay. I'm going to write it down here, make sure you guys know. So this is Z multiplier, well. Okay, and so the second part is just the standard error part, this part. You guys, does it look familiar to you? Sigma over square root n, yes, right, you have seen it before. Okay, good. Okay, and so the next part is some occasionally the population standard deviation, this is unknown. If it's unknown, okay, we are going to replace the sigma here because this part, the numerator here, is not given to us. So we will have to replace it by sample standard deviation, that's going to be S. Okay, instead of doing this, we have to do one more thing. Okay, so instead of a Z multiplier, we can no longer use a Z distribution. We would have to use a T multiplier. Where does the T multiplier comes from? Where does this part come from? Does it come from the normal distribution? It comes from the t-distribution, right? Which I'm going to talk more later on. Okay, so this comes from the t-distribution. Okay. And if you watch the video, you know the sample size at n-1, right? Okay, good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on one. So this is the first part for numerical data and the mean problems. And so for some other types of problem we're dealing with, maybe let's see, is categorical data, proportion problems. You probably remember we did something similar last time. It's very, very important. We are able to differentiate what kind of data we have, right? Okay, so either a numerical problem, numerical data that's going to be dealing with mean. They were talking about averages, standard deviation, and some other time it's going to be categorical data, and you're dealing with proportions or maybe percentages or ratios. So those are the problems we need. So to be honest, as far as 275 is concerned, every single all kinds of problems can be divided into either a mean problem or maybe a categorical problem, right? So mean problem that's dealing with numerical data, categorical problem dealing with proportion problem. Great. Okay, so let's see. Okay, and so if you're dealing with proportion problem, and you probably have the sample proportion information, and the question probably going to ask you how you can estimate population proportion. So you should not expect to see proportion given to you, population proportion given to you, because otherwise you will not be asked to estimate it. So this quantity P is typically unknown. I'm just going to put a question mark to remind you this is unknown. And this quantity is typically given to you. I'm going to put a check here. Okay, so this clearly sample proportion is going to be the point estimate for population proportion, and the confidence interval is going to be given in this form. And hopefully you guys remember this part looks really familiar to you, right? Okay, and a Z here is going to be a multiplier, just like what we had before. It's going to be a Z multiplier. You don't have to worry about the T distribution anymore. Okay,